10 years old when I celebrated the sacrament of confirmation. I don't remember a whole lot about that day. I do remember that my Uncle Danny was my confirmation sponsor, and I remember the ceremony took place in my home parish at St. Philip Neri in Indianapolis, and I remember this. I took Peter as my confirmation name, Thomas Edward Peter Clegg. I don't really know what was going on in my 10-year-old mind to choose the name Peter. I guess I probably heard that he was one of the apostles, and maybe one of the sisters had told me that he was the first pope, and so I had high aspirations. Or perhaps even as a 10-year-old, I sensed that Peter could, at the exact same moment, be 100% committed to Jesus and 100% unsure of what that really meant. So as I said, I don't really know why I chose St. Peter as my confirmation saint, but I know this. As a young adult and as an adult, I have come to discover that it was an inspired selection for me. Because I love St. Peter. I love his reckless courage. I love his occasional foot-in-the-mouth disease. I love his total commitment to Jesus, and I love that he didn't always get it right. Today's gospel is the turning point in Mark's gospel. It is also a quintessential St. Peter story. It's the turning point in Mark's gospel because Peter is the first human being to acknowledge that Jesus is the Messiah. He's the first one to say to Jesus, "You're the man, you're the one. I'm staking my life on the belief that you are the Christ, the anointed one of God." I love St. Peter. When he gets it right, he really gets it right. And when he gets it wrong, he gets it really, really wrong. When Jesus tells Peter and the others what being the Messiah is all about, that he will suffer, die, and be raised on the third day, it's Peter who takes him aside and begins to argue with him. "God forbid, Lord, any such thing might happen to you. We won't let that happen to you." And here's where we get that famous line, "Get behind me, Satan. You are thinking not as God does, but as human beings do." In other words, Jesus is saying to Peter, "Get out of my way. Satan, get lost. You have no idea how God works." And I think it's there, precisely there, where our story of our lives intersects with the gospel story. Because how often do we think that we have a better plan than God does? We don't say it that way, but every time we feel that gentle nudge from God about something we should be doing that we're not, or something that we're doing that we should not be doing, each time we feel that gentle nudge but push it aside or fail to act on it, isn't that exactly what we're doing? Thinking not as God does, but as we do? Somewhere in my training or when I preached on this before, I remember that the Greek word for behind, as in Jesus saying, "Get behind me, Satan," can also be used just as it can in English to mean support, rather than "get out of my sight." In other words, Jesus could be asking Peter to get behind him, to support him. Jesus could be trying to convince Peter to quit tempting him to turn away from his purpose, and instead get behind him, back him up, support him in his mission. You see, Jesus doesn't want Peter, and he doesn't want us to be afraid to follow him completely, to follow him unreservedly, to give our lives to him, not just some of the time, but all of the time, not just 100%, but 110%. You see, when Peter took Jesus aside and began to protest, Jesus had his eyes on the other 11. He saw them wavering. He saw them wondering what they should believe. And that's when Jesus confronts Peter. And then, calling to the others, he added this, and I'm paraphrasing, "Anyone who intends to follow me has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat, I am. Don't run from suffering, embrace it. Follow me, and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way to saving yourself, your true self. What good would it do to get everything you want and lose the real you? Satan for me, then, is that spirit of thinking too much of myself. Taken to its extreme, the love of self can lead to selfishness, to a total disregard for anyone else. I know best. I want that. I deserve this. It's all about me. That selfishness is destructive in relationship with others, but it also can kill our relationship with God. The more I think about it, the more I realize that it was the Holy Spirit that directed me to choose my confirmation name. You see, I am Peter, and I imagine some of you might have a little bit of St. Peter in you as well. It seems to me that Peter is no different than the rest of us. I think he did believe Jesus was the Messiah, but he, like all of us, had to grow in that understanding of what that meant. And we too, when we state that we believe Jesus is the Messiah, we have to realize that means it might have X, Y, Z implications in my life. We can't say we accept Jesus as our Messiah and then not let him change us into what he wants us to be. And when we choose to follow our own way, rather than listen to that gentle nudge, in a sense we are taking Jesus aside and arguing with him just as Peter did. And when that nudge comes back to us again, and it will come back to us again, when we catch ourselves saying, Jesus, you can have this part of my life, but not that part, not quite yet, that's when Jesus whispers quietly to us, I'll wait. I'm waiting. Let me know when you are ready. That's Jesus' way of helping us understand what it means to have him as our Messiah. And then, like Peter, we'll get a little embarrassed, we'll be a little ashamed, but then we begin to get it. We begin to get the revelation of who Jesus is. It's a revelation of who Jesus is and who we are. And in that revelation, we find a way to love Jesus even more.